my God. Okay, Bestie, you ready for this? Imagine this exact scene. Picture it in your mind. A loose charcuterie board, literally unhinged meats, free-floating prosciutto, and structurally compromised water crackers hurtling down Interstate 93.
A literal nightmare.
Right, and it's happening in the middle of a screaming match about the legal definition of homelessness. Meanwhile, in a completely different zip code, someone is wearing a pageant sash reading Miss Slam Pig at a coffee shop trivia night.
It is honestly the absolute pinnacle of human dysfunction. I am obsessed.
Oh, I know. So today, Snark Squad, we aren't just recapping reality TV. We are dissecting the psychology of public humiliation, the dark underbelly of generational trauma, and exploring whether a contract written with a bedazzled pen might actually hold up in a court of law.
Spoiler alert, it absolutely does not.
Well, we will get to that.
Yeah.
Welcome back, babes. We hope you had an amazing week. And of course, babes, thank you for being here with us on the Snark side.
We need you here. Desperately. Because if you hear a low, mechanical whirring in the background right now, or the aggressive clinking of ice, you should know that we decided to throw an entire bottle of rosé wine into the Ninja Slush tonight.
We did. Because, babes, we are absolutely spiraling this evening. We are seeking emotional refuge in frozen pink alcohol.
It is a fundamental medical necessity at this point, because we officially survived the camping trip. Barely, but we did it.
Barely's doing so much heavy lifting in that sentence. Snark Squad, we are so incredibly happy to be back in civilization.
So happy.
I don't think I've fully comprehended on a deep emotional level how much my entire personality relies on centralized air conditioning until it was violently stripped away from me.
Oh, 100%.
My soul literally requires a constant 72 degrees to function with any sort of empathy.
It is scientifically proving that your baseline personality degrades when the humidity hits 80%, and you are forced to sleep on a piece of high-density foam layered over a sheet of plywood in a moving vehicle.
Ugh, the beds.
I am still, both logistically and psychologically, recovering from the sheer trauma of the RV. The lack of real mattresses felt like a human rights violation.
It really did.
And the indoor plumbing situation. Let's just say my standards for sanitation have fundamentally shifted, and not for the better. Nature is beautiful. It is absolutely stunning, but strictly from a distance, through a triple-paned window.
Okay, but hear me out, bestie. Let me just play devil's advocate for nature for 1 second.
I will not allow it.
No, wait. There were moments. The quiet mornings when the sun was just coming up over the trees and the aesthetic of the little tin mugs with the campfire coffee, it was giving very nostalgic core memory vibes. I felt like we really bonded with the universe out there.
I am shutting this romanticization down right now.
Why is cute?
There was no bonding. You were sweating through a flannel shirt at 7 in the morning. I was actively swatting horseflies with a rolled-up magazine, and the RV smelled like damp towels and deeply rooted familial regret.
Okay, the towels did smell bad.
Do not try to Pinterest board this experience. I am clinically traumatized by the great outdoors, and I will not pretend otherwise.
Fine. I will concede the horseflies. But honestly, the camping trip wasn't even the hardest part of the week.
Yeah.
Snark Squad, we need to confess something to you right now.
We do?
We officially survived 1 full week of being vegetarian.
A full 7 days, 168 hours of pure, unadulterated, plant-based survival.
It was unbelievably hard, emotionally taxing in a way I just did not anticipate at all.
Yeah, the logistics of it were a nightmare.
Right. I was having these weird, deeply specific, unexpected cravings for things I don't even normally eat.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was accidentally becoming healthier.
Sure, your skin looked great.
My skin looked radiant. I felt very proud of myself, but I was just deeply, deeply exhausted on a spiritual level. I was dreaming about cheeseburgers, babe.
You were sleep-talking about cheese.
Literally waking up in a cold sweat, imagining melted sharp cheddar cascading over a beef patty.
Well, the human body is a machine, and we purposefully deprived our machines of their historically preferred fuel. The psychological toll of pretending a black bean patty is an adequate substitute for the joy of a seared steak is staggering. We were operating on a joy deficit.
We were. Which brings us to our next confession. Tonight was officially our first meat meal in a week. And babes, we broke Vegetarian Week with a greasy, unapologetic double cheeseburger with bacon.
We didn't just break the vegetarian streak, we shattered it. We took a culinary sledgehammer to our plant-based week.
It was legitimately life-changing. I feel emotionally transformed right now. The healing power of fast food is so real, Snark Squad.
It's medicinal.
I took one bite and I swear, The grease literally restored my soul. It coated my stomach in this warm, protective blanket of saturated fat, and I felt my spirit aggressively return to my physical body.
A spiritual awakening via drive-through.
Bacon feels like a spiritual experience after a week of deprivation. It just does.
If we break it down analytically, the immense sodium and fat content spiked our dopamine levels so aggressively that it actually functioned as a cure for our clinical camping trauma.
Yes.
The burger was a targeted psychological intervention for our RV-induced PTSD.
It really was a targeted intervention.
Yeah.
And thank God we had it, because by the time this drops for you, Snark Squad, it'll officially be the work week. So happy work week, babes, with immediate exhaustion.
Immediate and overwhelming exhaustion. We are walking back into the dental office tomorrow morning, and the reality of that is already setting in like a heavy fog.
It is. Let's do a quick highs and lows of the upcoming week as dentists.
Yeah.
Because the Snark Squad needs to know what kind of clinical trenches we were dealing with.
Trenches is the correct word.
For me, the highs are always the emotional connections, like the coworker gossip. Catching up on everyone's weekend drama by the sterilization machines is iconic. Plus, I do love finally returning to the routine. Getting my iced coffee on the way in, having those cute little office moments where we complain about the schedule. It gives me the delusion of feeling productive and put together.
The delusion is doing a lot of heavy lifting for you.
What are your lows then?
My lows. The early mornings. My alarm clock is an act of violence against my circadian rhythm.
Dramatic.
And the endless mind-numbing emails about supply orders. Plus, the patients who cancel literally 5 minutes before their appointment, leaving us staring at an empty chair while we try to calculate how to bill for lost time.
Ugh, the worst.
The inter-office drama about who didn't restock the composite resin. And most importantly, trying to recover from this grueling camping trip while actively pretending to function as a highly trained medical professional, holding sharp instruments inside people's mouths.
I'm trying to stay optimistic, bestie. Think of the impact. We get to help people. We get to perfect smiles. We are healers.
I am emotionally checked out, and it's not even Tuesday. I am going to be staring into the dark abyss of people's molars just thinking about the structural integrity of that double cheeseburger.
Honestly, same. Because we genuinely need at least 2 solid weeks to recover from spending 2 straight days with our families in the wilderness.
We require a medically induced coma to fully reset. The family camping trauma is an entirely specific subgenre of horror.
It's the constant family chaos. Everyone is talking at once. No one is actively listening to anyone else.
Ever.
The passive-aggressive comments over setting up the tents, like, oh, you're putting the load-bearing pole there. Interesting choice, considering the wind direction.
Your dad was out of control.
The RV tension when there are 6 fully grown adults trying to maneuver around each other in a hallway. The exact dimensions of a shoebox. The campfire drama where suddenly 10-year-old childhood grievances were being aired out over melting s'mores.
Yeah.
I swear, Snark Squad, our family members were acting like actual reality TV villains.
They were fully producing their own storylines. They saw the cameras in their minds. Logistically, it was a disaster.
But what was your least favorite moment?
If we're talking least favorite moments, the sheer palpable RV stress of trying to park that 30-foot behemoth while my dad yelled entirely contradictory spatial directions out the passenger window.
Turn left, no turn right.
Exactly. The bugs,
Yeah.
the bitter cold weather at night, my parents aggressively throwing pool shade at each other across the picnic table like they were at a Bravo reunion, and the horrifying bathroom situations at the public campground that I will literally need cognitive behavioral therapy to unpack.
Okay, but my favorite moments, like at the beach walks, we had those really beautiful, grounding campfire laughs when everyone finally relaxed and stopped trying to control the environment.
Only took 48 hours.
The sunset views over the lake were gorgeous, and the late-night gossip when everyone else went to sleep and it was just us spilling family tea in the dark. It was emotionally grounding, even with the absolute chaos.
I am so glad your emotional center feels grounded. I feel like I survived a rigorous psychological experiment designed to test my breaking point. But speaking of reality TV villains, deeply transactional relationships, and psychological warfare, we need to seamlessly transition to the main event.
Yes, we do. Let me pour us another round of this rosé slush.
Please.
Check your phone real quick. I know the group chat is going completely off with mid-morning chaos right now. And then we are diving headfirst into the absolute unmitigated mess that is The Real Housewives of Rhode Island, Episode 9.
The central thesis of this entire episode, and frankly this entire cast, is the transactional nature of relationships. Every single interaction we are about to discuss is rooted in a power dynamic where currency, whether it is actual cash, social capital, or weaponized trauma, is being violently exchanged.
Oh, I love that framing.
Yeah.
Because it is so true. We have been avid fans. We've been waiting for this exact moment to drop. And babes, we have so many thoughts.
So many.
Let's start with this unbelievable triple date in Cranston and the slam pig Google search that broke the internet.
Setting the geographical and historical scene is crucial here. We are at Circe Prime in Cranston. Now, historically, this specific building is a former reformatory chapel and infirmary for the Sockanosset School for Boys, which was later replaced by the Rhode Island Training School.
Right, really?
Yes, so they're literally eating dry-aged steaks in a former juvenile detention center.
That is so incredibly poetic. The energetic backdrop is literally a prison for misbehaving youth, which perfectly mirrors this cast. So we have a triple date: Joellen and Gary, Liz and Jerry, and Kelsey and her new boyfriend, Billy.
Right.
And immediately, before the appetizers even hit the table, Kelsey brings up the house police fight from the last episode where Rosie called her a slam pig.
And here is where the sociological absurdity peaks. The entire table, a group of fully grown, affluent adults sitting in a high-end steakhouse, literally has to pull out their smartphones and Google the insult.
They didn't know what it meant.
They are so profoundly out of the loop with modern, derogatory internet slang that they require Urban Dictionary to understand the precise mechanics of how deeply they are being insulted.
Bestie, it was mortifying to watch. They read the definition out loud at the table.
While eating.
A promiscuous woman, usually overweight and ugly, who is only used for pumping and dumping.
At a fine dining establishment.
I was gasping for air. The slut-shaming, it is so violently misogynistic. It is so degrading. I am completely siding with the Reddit fans on this one. Rosie took it way, way too far. You don't use language like that against another woman. It strips away all her humanity. It's just disgusting.
I completely agree that it is objectively a vile, deeply misogynistic term. But let's push back on the mechanics of why Rosie used it.
Because she's mean.
Yes,
Right.
But from a strategic reality TV perspective, it was a masterclass in calculated destruction. Rosie didn't just insult Kelsey, she branded her. She knew exactly what she was saying, even if the rest of the cast needed a digital encyclopedia to decode it. Rosie is using language as a blunt force weapon to establish dominance in the social hierarchy.
But it's such a low blow.
It is a low blow, but notice how it entirely derailed Kelsey's narrative. Kelsey wants to be the glamorous, untouchable pageant queen. Rosie used a term so gutter level that it dragged Kelsey down into the mud. And what's truly fascinating is how the conversation at that dinner table immediately pivots from Rosie's horrific insult to Kelsey's extremely questionable financial setup.
Oh my God, the sugar daddy debate. I almost threw my slushie at the television.
That was so uncomfortable.
Kelsey just openly discusses in front of God and everyone in this former reformatory chapel that her ex-boyfriend is still actively paying her rent.
Right. And her current boyfriend, Billy, is sitting right next to her, staring into his water glass, looking like he is praying for the floor of the chapel to physically open up and swallow him whole.
He looks so intensely uncomfortable. You could visibly see his ego deflating. And then Kelsey, trying to read the room and failing spectacularly, tries to make a joke to cut the tension. She says she has to, blow him once a week to keep the rent money flowing.
Which was a choice.
Bestie, the joke landed with a sickening thud. It landed so terribly.
Because the joke hits far too close to the transactional reality of her life. Let's analyze the mechanics of this arrangement. In her solo confessional, Kelsey explicitly admits that if things get serious with Billy, the money from the ex stops.
Wow.
So this isn't just a generous, no-strings-attached parting gift from a wealthy ex. This is a financial holding pattern. It is, essentially, common law alimony designed to keep her tethered to him. And if we look back at the historical data from episode 1, Kelsey explicitly admitted she would not have won the title of Miss Rhode Island without her ex's money. He fully bankrolled her pageant career.
Look, you know me. I will always, always defend a girl getting the bag. Get your rent paid, live your life, secure your financial freedom in a patriarchal society. I am all for it.
Sure.
But doing it on camera, joking about performing sexual acts for rent in front of the new boyfriend who is clearly deeply emasculated by the entire situation, it made me cringe so hard I almost pulled a facial muscle. Have some basic emotional awareness, Kelsey.
But you're assuming Kelsey values emotional awareness over screen time, which is a flawed premise. Emotional awareness is fundamentally absent from Kelsey's playbook.
That's true.
She is playing a very specific, highly transactional game. By parading this financial dependency on camera, she isn't just getting her rent paid, she is turning her relationship into a performance art piece about power dynamics. One of the Reddit commenters completely nailed the architecture of this feud. They pointed out that Kelsey versus Rosie is really our generation's Kenya Moore versus Neen Leakes.
Wow. Okay, that is incredibly high praise for reality TV dynamics, but honestly, it's so accurate. It's the younger, attention-seeking stunt queen who knows exactly how to poke the bear versus the low-key, established, humorless heavyweight who commands fear.
Exactly.
Kelsey is playing a dangerous game, but she knows it guarantees her a contract next season.
It is a symbiotic ecosystem of toxicity, which perfectly illustrates why we need to pivot from the blatant transactional relationships at the dinner table to the deeply concealed manipulative transactions happening on the shoreline.
Yes. The beach stroll. Snark Squad, we cut to Rula and Alicia strolling along East Matunuck State Beach. And the producers give us this beautiful, sweeping, establishing shot of the Beavertail Lighthouse.
So picturesque.
It is very cinematic, very coastal grandmother chic, but the content of their conversation is incredibly, incredibly dark.
It is a jarring juxtaposition between the serene maritime environment and the absolute psychological horror Rula is casually describing.
It was so dark. Rula is crying over her husband Brian's betrayal. And she drops this horrifying historical detail about their early relationship, bestie. She reveals that when they first met, Brian used to secretly get her drunk.
He intentionally and covertly manipulated her alcohol intake to lower her inhibitions and maintain control over her physical state.
I reacted with total visceral disgust. My stomach dropped. That is such an astronomical red flag. It is predatory, it is coercive control, and it is a textbook definition of emotional and physical abuse. My heart just broke into a million pieces for Rula in that moment because she was normalizing something so deeply sinister. How do you even process that realization on national television while walking in the sand?
You process it by deflecting and dissociating. But what is truly staggering here is the power dynamic between Rula and Alicia in this exact moment. Because while Rula is pouring her heart out, entirely vulnerable, exposing Brian's historical red flags, Alicia is literally holding onto a loaded gun.
Literally.
Alicia has a video on her phone of Brian currently out with a mistress, and she refuses to tell Rula. She just listens, nods, and keeps the secret.
It's driving me completely crazy. I was yelling at the screen. If that is your friend, you have to tell her. You cannot let her cry about his past behavior while you hold the proof of his current betrayal.
But this is where we have to ask the critical question. Why is Alicia withholding this evidence? If they are truly emotionally bonded friends, you show the video immediately. The only logical, analytical conclusion is that Alicia's is producing her own storyline. She is keeping the video in her back pocket to drop at the maximum point of impact for her own screen time. She is treating Rula's marriage as narrative currency.
Oh, you think she's self-producing? Like, you think she's holding it for the finale dinner party? But wait, bestie, we have to drop the after-show tea right now because it changes the entire architecture of this betrayal.
Oh, the logistics behind how that video was leaked are staggering. It redefines the power dynamics of the entire cast.
Snark Squad, if you didn't watch the after-show, you missed the most jaw-dropping behind-the-scenes detail of the season. Alicia didn't just randomly stumble upon this video of Brian. Jo Ellen was actually the one who intercepted the video of Brian and the mistress.
Mind-blowing.
Jo Ellen had the video, and Jo Ellen secretly passed it to Alicia.
Which means Jo Ellen is playing a massive, invisible game of three-dimensional chess behind the scenes. She doesn't want the dirt on her hands, so she weaponizes Alicia to do her dirty work. Jo Ellen is the puppet master. They are all playing so incredibly dirty. It's sociologically brilliant, but it is morally bankrupt.
It's so toxic. Jo Ellen wants the explosion, but refuses to light the match herself. But also, can we just take a moment to appreciate Rula's overall strategy this season?
We have to.
Rula secured second chair at the reunion while barely working. She refuses to go to half the group events, she leaves dinners early, and she still gets top billing. It's iconic. I have to respect the absolute lack of effort yielding maximum results.
Rula is operating on a purely efficient return on investment model. She gives the producers the bare minimum filming hours, but the emotional weight of her marital collapse guarantees maximum reunion placement. It's a masterclass in narrative efficiency.
Which brings us to someone who is giving maximum effort for maximum chaos, with zero efficiency. Let's talk about the pageant sash incident at Audrey's coffee house.
Let's lay out the logistics of this incredibly absurd setup. Ashley and her husband Jared are shopping at Restaurant Depot in Cranston. Very glamorous, very high society.
Oh, so glamorous.
They are buying bulk paper napkins and enormous vats of mayonnaise for their trivia night at their coffee shop Audrey's down in South Kingstown.
And Rosie calls Ashley while she's standing in the middle of aisle 4
Uh-huh.
at Restaurant Depot, threatening to boycott the entire trivia night if Kelsey comes. She is actively putting Ashley right in the middle of this toxic feud.
And of course, Ashley, who possesses the conflict resolution skills of a panicked deer, is incapable of firmly uninviting anyone.
She just can't do it.
She tries to play Switzerland, which means both Rosie and Kelsey show up, and Kelsey doesn't just show up quietly. Kelsey arrives wearing a literal sparkling tiara and a custom-made silk pageant sash that prominently reads Miss Slam Pig.
I screamed. I literally dropped my drink and screamed at my television. It was the most calculated, petty, brilliant stunt I have ever seen on Bravo.
It was theater.
She walks into a suburban coffee shop trivia night and announces to the room, she's beauty, she's grace, she's Miss Slam Pig United States.
It is calculated pettiness of the highest order, but it's also a brilliant defensive mechanism. Kelsey's strategy with the Slam Pig sash is like a political candidate leaking their own embarrassing memo to control the news cycle.
Oh, true.
She took the exact insult Rosie used to degrade her, bedazzled it, and wore it as armor. She weaponized the insult so Rosie couldn't use it against her anymore. She stripped Rosie of her power.
Yes, she took the power back. And it hit the target perfectly.
Yeah.
A massive screaming match erupts immediately. Rosie and Kelsey are just going at it, hurling insults over the espresso machines.
It was loud.
And poor Ashley, the owner of the establishment, completely loses her mind. She starts screaming at the top of her lungs, who's tired of fighting, yelling, and fighting all the time. And then she just starts aggressively sobbing into her hands.
Which, objectively speaking, is hilarious. Ashley hosting a reality TV event and expecting a normal, civilized conversation is giving profound, untreated delusion.
Poor Ashley.
You signed a contract with a reality television network, Ashley. You did not sign up to host a silent knitting circle. Conflict is the currency of the realm.
We were texting each other laughing so hard. Ashley is such a terrible housewife because she genuinely cannot handle the conflict. But that exact inability to handle it makes her incredibly compelling television.
Exactly.
The jarring contrast between her crying about wanting world peace and Kelsey yelling, oink, oink, motherfucker, across a display case of blueberry muffins is pure art.
It belongs in the Louvre. It is a Renaissance painting of modern hysteria. And let's not overlook the absolute absurdity of the background details. Ashley, bless her heart, is trying to desperately continue the trivia game amidst the screaming.
She kept going.
She literally grabs the microphone and asks the room a trivia question about Providence's famous Big Blue Bug roadside attraction.
While the rest of the women are literally physically hiding under the tables, they're taking cover under the particle board coffee tables to escape the verbal crossfire.
And Rosie finally storms out, dramatically pushing open the glass door and delivering the line, "The clique needs to stop clicking." It was a masterclass in scene exiting. It made absolutely no grammatical sense, but the delivery was flawless.
It really was. But amidst all this screaming and flying trivia cards, we actually have some business being conducted in this episode, which leads us to Alicia's desperate attempt at securing her own bag. Let's talk about the clueless business pitch.
The pivot from a coffee shop brawl over a derogatory pig insult to a corporate boardroom, or rather a suburban kitchen table, is whiplash-inducing.
Right. So Alicia's following Rula's advice to secure her financial future so she isn't left destitute. She decides to pitch her boyfriend, Billy, for an actual equity stake in his restaurant, Pizza Mama.
Bold move.
And she shows up to the kitchen table wearing a sweater vest layered over a crisp white blouse. Total Cher Horowitz from Clueless vibes. She's dressing for the job she wants.
The aesthetic was incredibly specific. It was corporate cosplay. But the presentation itself, she brings a middle school science fair cardboard trifold board, a literal cardboard trifold with glued-on pictures.
It was so endearing. She was trying so hard. She highlights the restaurant's chandeliers as its main selling point, as if people go to a pizza place for the lighting fixtures.
They don't.
And then she pitches these ideas. Serving heart-shaped pizzas year-round, adding handwritten mama's notes to the delivery orders to make them personal, and making the cardboard pizza boxes look like wrapped gift boxes.
And let's analyze Billy's reaction to this vulnerable display of ambition.
Yeah.
He literally laughs directly in her face. He patronizes her. He tells her on camera that he doesn't trust her with business stuff.
which was so incredibly condescending and emotionally dismissive. I was so proud of Alicia in that moment, and my heart broke when he left. Snark Squad, she is trying so desperately to break deep systemic generational cycles. She talked openly about how her mother was entirely financially dependent on men and how her father abandoned them, leaving them with nothing. She explicitly stated she doesn't want to be in that vulnerable position. She is trying to advocate for herself and her daughter, Selena. My heart was just beaming with pride for her taking that step.
But bestie, we have to push back on the reality of the execution. I acknowledge the emotional growth, but as an analytical observer, the execution was fundamentally flawed.
Why do you say that?
Billy sees she's upset, so he eventually agrees to give her a 10% stake in the next location of Pizza Mama, not the current profitable one, the hypothetical non-existent next one. And how do they solidify this momentous corporate agreement?
She wrote it down.
Alicia handwrites the contract on a piece of spiral notepad paper using a pink bedazzled pen.
Hey, legally binding is legally binding. If it's on paper, it's a contract.
Is it? I severely question the legal binding of a bedazzled notepad contract. If they break up tomorrow, do you honestly believe a judge in the state of Rhode Island is going to look at a piece of ripped loose-leaf paper written in sparkly pink ink and grant her a 10% equity stake in a multi-location commercial restaurant enterprise?
Well, maybe.
No, Billy was absolutely patronizing her. He gave her a literal piece of paper to make her feel emotionally secure while legally protecting his own actual assets. He gave her a pacifier, not a partnership.
You are so incredibly cynical. Let her have her Elwood's moment. She is stepping into her power.
Ideal in facts and mechanics, bestie. And the fact is, the mechanism of that contract is legally hollow. It is as structurally flimsy and precarious as the charcuterie board in the very next scene.
Oh my God, the charcuterie board. Snark Squad, buckle up, because we are getting into the loose charcuterie board to Boston.
The logistical setup for this scene is already a recipe for absolute disaster. Rosie invites the women, minus Kelsey obviously because of the sash incident, to Capo Restaurant in South Boston for Sinatra Sunday to watch her husband Rich sing cover songs.
Which, if you know the area, is a daunting 45-minute drive in heavy traffic from where they live. So Joellen, Liz, and Alicia carpool in an SUV driving straight up Interstate 93. And what do they bring for road trip snacks?
Unbelievable.
A massive, completely uncontained, loose charcuterie board propped precariously right between the seats.
Prosciutto, free-floating in the cabin air, crackers structurally compromised by the humidity, olives one pothole away from becoming projectiles. It is a physical hazard, but the real hazard in that vehicle is Liz.
Yes, because Liz decides this car ride is the perfect time to bring up Alicia's past trauma again. At the previous dinner, Alicia had mentioned that she was homeless as a child, and Liz aggressively starts policing Alicia's use of that specific word.
Let's review the exact data points of this argument. Alicia explains that she spoke to her mother to clarify the timeline, and her mother confirmed that after her father left, they were evicted. They bounced from house to house, sleeping on couches, staying with a distant relative.
Yeah.
They had no permanent residence. Therefore, Alicia, as a child, felt homeless.
Exactly. That is the definition of housing insecurity. And Liz claims she is doing this to protect Alicia from fan backlash, saying people on the internet will think she's lying because she didn't literally sleep on a park bench under a newspaper.
Absurd logic.
But instead of listening to Alicia's lived experience, Liz ends up completely dissecting and invalidating Alicia's childhood trauma. She gatekeeps suffering over semantics, and Alicia just breaks down sobbing in the back of the SUV.
Analytically, we have to look at why Liz is doing this. Liz's argument is rooted in a rigid, stereotypical definition of homelessness. But she isn't just being pedantic about grammar. She is trying to control the narrative.
She just wants to be right.
Liz has this deep psychological need to be the smartest, most rational person in the room. By correcting Alicia's trauma, she establishes dominance. She is completely ignoring the psychological reality of housing insecurity in favor of being right.
I got extremely heated watching this, Bessie. I was
Right.
practically yelling at the television screen. If you have no permanent home as a child, if you are being bounced from couch to spare room, never knowing where you are going to sleep next week, you are unhoused.
You are.
You do not have the safety, security, and psychological grounding of a home. Liz's total lack of empathy was disgusting. It's like someone is emotionally bleeding out in front of you and you are standing there correcting their grammar.
I agree with the emotional assessment, but let's push back on Liz's motive. Do you think Liz is doing this out of pure malice or because she genuinely lacks the emotional intelligence to understand the nuance of trauma?
I think she lacks emotional intelligence entirely.
Because if you look at the social media reaction, the audience is tearing Liz apart. They are comparing her to Caroline Manzo's darkest moments. Liz thought she was being the voice of reason, the protector of the group's image, but her mask has completely slipped. It is giving major unlikable villain energy. She cannot read the emotional temperature of the room.
She has absolutely no emotional intelligence.
Mm.
And poor Joe Ellen is stuck in the back seat trying to mediate this absolute nightmare. She's literally trying to force-feed Alicia a water cracker from the loose charcuterie board to calm her down.
Eat some brie, please.
She's like, eat some brie, please stop crying. But Liz snaps. She fully loses it. She calls Joe Ellen phony and screams, "Get out of my left ear," while barreling down the highway.
The aggression escalated so quickly from a debate over semantics to outright hostility. And then the producers give us the preview for episode 10 at the Sinatra gig in South Boston.
The preview. Snark Squad, the preview shows Liz aggressively shoving Joe Ellen and physically pulling her hair on the sidewalk outside the restaurant.
A physical altercation between adult women over a discussion about the linguistic definition of homelessness that happened an hour prior in a moving vehicle. The escalation is clinically insane. It demonstrates a complete breakdown of impulse control.
It's going to be so incredibly messy. But the mess didn't even stop when the episode ended. Because, babes, we have to talk about the unseen chaos and the dark rumors that dropped afterward.
The aftershow delivered massive data points that recontextualized the entire season. We have to process this.
First of all, the hush money allegations. Kelsey drops this brutal, unprompted confessional on the aftershow claiming that Rosie's massive, sprawling 8,000-square-foot custom-built house was bought with a quiet legal settlement from an affair with a local college basketball coach.
Let's look at the mechanics of Kelsey's claim. Kelsey alleges that years ago, Rosie confided in her that she was broke, struggling to make ends meet working at a local public access news station. And then suddenly, seemingly overnight, she is building this massive multi-million-dollar estate.
Which is suspicious.
The financial math, according to Kelsey's hypothesis, requires a massive influx of untraceable capital, either a sugar daddy or hush money, to avoid a scandal.
And Kelsey is just throwing this out there on an after-show couch. To completely destroy Rosie's credibility, she is fighting dirty. But wait, it gets weirder. Gary and Joellen go on the after-show strictly to deny neighborhood rumors that they are swingers.
They said on camera and explicitly stated, "Gary and I are not swingers." Which, statistically speaking, usually means someone in their upscale suburban neighborhood definitely saw a pineapple decor piece on their front porch and made an immediate wild assumption.
I am dead. The upside-down pineapple on the porch. It's the universal suburban signal. But Bestie, the biggest bombshell of all, the absolute most chaotic, jaw-dropping thing to ever come out of this entire Bravo franchise.
I still can't believe it.
Liz casually dropping the reveal that she and her husband Jerry recently took a DNA test and discovered that they are distantly related.
They are cousins.
They are cousins. Bestie, I cannot. I am gagging. I am physically unwell. How do you just casually drop that on an after show while wearing a sequin blazer?
From a genetic and sociological standpoint, it frankly explains a lot of the underlying tension in their marriage. But truly, to voluntarily offer that specific piece of information to a Bravo producer, unforced error, a massive, catastrophic, career-defining unforced error. Why would you weaponize your own DNA against yourself?
I need a whole 6-part true crime documentary just on that DNA test.
Yeah.
Okay, my glass is entirely empty. The slush machine is looking at me seductively.
Sure.
Let's do a natural transition, refill the rosé slushies, declare that we need to judge these women formally, and move into the segment.
Let's gavel in. We have some formal psychological judgments to hand down to the Snark Squad.
Okay, segment 1. Most likely to start drama at the campground. Bestie, out of this cast, who would absolutely ruin our family camping trip first?
Logistically, it's Liz. Liz would ruin the ecosystem immediately. She would start a physical altercation over someone using the wrong terminology to describe the campfire snacks.
Oh, 100%.
Someone would say, "I'm roasting this marshmallow," and Liz would scream, "Actually, based on the proximity to the flame, you are charring it. You're misleading everyone about the chemical reaction," and then she would pull their hair.
Oh my God, you are so right. The semantics of the Samora. But emotionally, I argue it would be Kelsey. Kelsey would show up to a dirt campsite in the woods with a battery-operated police siren because there's no glamping tent.
She absolutely would.
She would demand that someone's ex-boyfriend pay for a diesel generator. She would wear a custom sash that says Miss Mosquito Bite and just antagonize everyone at the picnic table until they packed up the RV and sped away in the night.
Both are incredibly valid hypotheses. Kelsey attacks the aesthetic, Liz attacks the reality. Moving to segment 2. Soft girl survival rankings. Who would actually emotionally survive outdoor life?
Let's rank them from bottom to top. Alicia would be at the absolute bottom, but in a really cute, endearing way. She would try to bedazzle the campfire stones. She would bring a cardboard trifold board to the wilderness to explain to the park ranger why we need chandeliers installed in the canvas tents.
Ashley would be eliminated from the survival roster within 3 minutes. She would see one single beetle, Scream, who is tired of the fighting and the yelling from the local insect population, and start sobbing uncontrollably against a pine tree.
True. She would surrender to the woods immediately.
Yeah.
But you know who would win? Who would actually thrive? Rula.
Rula would simply refuse to participate in the survival experiment entirely.
Exactly. Rula would pull up in her luxury SUV, look at the dirt campsite, say, I am protecting my peace and my pores, and drive straight back to a 5-star hotel.
She wouldn't even unpack.
And she'd still get top billing on the camping trip recap. We have to praise her for that level of fierce boundary setting. She is the ultimate survivor because she refuses to enter the arena.
It is an inspirational level of strategic avoidance. Okay, segment 3. Greasiest post-vegetarian meal. Let's spiral about the exact meals we both fantasized about all week during that traumatic camping trip. We talked about the emotional healing of the double cheeseburger, but what else was haunting your culinary dreams?
Oh, the desperation was deep, babe. I wasn't just dreaming of the burger. I was fantasizing about the darkest, most aggressively deep-fried fast food. Like a massive bucket of heavily breaded deep-fried chicken from that local spot down the street from the clinic.
The extra crispy one.
Yes. I wanted ungodly amounts of processed cheese. I wanted cheese fries that were structurally more cheese than potato. I realized out there in the woods that reality TV just pairs best with high cholesterol takeout. You cannot watch women physically fight each other over a loose charcuterie board while eating a kale salad. The energy simply doesn't match.
The energetic mismatch is real. You need heavy proteins to anchor the flighty anxiety of reality television. My fantasy was purely carbohydrate and sodium-driven.
What was it?
I wanted a meatball sub, completely submerged in bubbling marinara and provolone to the point where the structural integrity of the bread was entirely compromised. I wanted to eat it in absolute silence in an air-conditioned, sterile room. That visual was my survival mantra in the RV.
You were visually manifesting the sub. I love that for you. Okay, final segment. Segment 4, family group chat courtroom. We need to put our own family camping behavior on trial. Confess your toxic traits, bestie. The Snark Squad needs the truth.
I will take the stand under oath. I admit to making highly sarcastic, deeply passive-aggressive comments while my dad struggled to park the RV.
Oh, I heard you.
I was not a helpful co-pilot. I sat in the passenger seat, sipping room temperature water, offering unhelpful spatial analysis like, well, geometrically speaking, that angle of approach is never going to work with the turning radius, while he sweat entirely through his shirt. I was the villain of the parking process.
That is so incredibly toxic of you. You were emotionally withholding. Okay, I confess, I emotionally spiraled over a profoundly minor inconvenience. We ran out of ice on day 2, and I treated it like we were stranded on a desert island facing imminent demise.
You really did.
I sat in a nylon camping chair and delivered a 5-minute monologue about how I simply could not consume a room-temperature Diet Coke and how the trip was fundamentally irreparably ruined. I was giving total, unhinged Ashley Iaconetti meltdown energy.
Based on the evidence presented, I rule that you were the bigger reality TV villain of the trip, simply because of the theatricality of the dramatic monologue.
I accept the verdict. I own my meltdown.
We must always hold ourselves accountable to the Snark Squad.
Always. Snark Squad, thank you so much for hanging out and surviving the chaos with us tonight. We desperately needed this recap with you.
We did, but now we need data points from you. Hit the comments and tell us the truth. Could you actually survive camping with your family, or would it inevitably end in a Real Housewives-style brawl over the propane stove?
Yes. And tell us the very first meal you'd aggressively eat after a week of being vegetarian. What is your ultimate grease fantasy? Also, drop your best or absolutely most traumatic camping memory. Let us validate your outdoor trauma.
And finally, based on our deep psychological analysis today, which Real Housewife of Rhode Island would you absolutely never go on vacation with? The data will be fascinating to compile.
Do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe, babes. It legitimately helps us keep the rosé slushy machine running, and we need it to survive the dental clinic this week.
Stay messy.
Stay dramatic.
And we will see you on the Snark side.